The numbers are staggering. Some estimate that nearly $45 trillion was drained from India between 1765 and 1938. This mind-boggling sum, 17 times the United Kingdom's current GDP, ignites debate about the true cost of colonialism. The East India Company, once a simple trading venture, morphed into a powerful instrument of control, systematically siphoning off India's wealth to fuel Britain's rise. Uncover the secrets behind this drain of wealth, a complex web of trade tactics, currency games, and resource domination that forever changed the course of two nations. Imagine a system where your resources are used against you. That was India under British mercantilism, 1757 to 1813. The East India Company, after seizing control, used Indian tax revenues to buy Indian goods. But these weren't for Indians. They were exported to England, fueling Britain's Industrial Revolution. Was this just smart business or outright theft? Some argue it was a necessary, if harsh, step in global economics. Others say it decimated Indian industries and transferred wealth. This drain of wealth amounted to 2 to 3% of Britain's national income. The British flooded the market with cheap goods. The East India Company's monopoly ended, but free trade meant India became a supplier of raw materials and a market for British textiles. Was this a fair exchange or economic warfare? Some argue it integrated India into the global economy. Others claim it destroyed Indian industries and led to poverty and famines. Railways were built, but primarily to move resources for British gain. Did this free trade truly benefit anyone besides Britain? Or was it a system designed to extract wealth? British investors poured money into India, but primarily for railways and infrastructure designed to extract resources. This era saw a massive transfer of wealth from India to Britain. Even with British investment, India's economic growth was slow. It wasn't just about taxes. It was a systematic siphoning of India's wealth to Britain, leaving India economically drained. India's resources, money and goods were taken to Britain without fair return. Think of it as a one-way street, with wealth flowing out of India, never to return. The British used Indian tax money to buy Indian goods, then sold these goods in England. The profit stayed in Britain. British officers in India were paid high salaries, which they often sent back home to England. Indian money was used to fund British military campaigns, even those outside India. India paid for the administrative costs of the British government in London. This included pensions and other expenses. In Bengal, the British declared certain landlords as owners and tasked them to collect taxes. These landlords had to pay a fixed amount to the British, regardless of the harvest. If farmers couldn't pay, they lost their land. In other areas, the British dealt directly with the farmers. The government fixed high taxes, and if farmers failed to pay, they were evicted. Mahalwari system. In some regions, villages were treated as single units, mahal, for tax collection. The village headman was responsible for collecting taxes, making the entire community responsible for the individual gain. Some argue that British rule brought benefits like railways and modern administration. They say the drain is exaggerated. However, the impact on Indian industries was devastating. Indian artisans and craftsmen were ruined by cheap British goods. Famines became more frequent and severe. The result: economic stagnation. India, once a wealthy nation, became impoverished. The drain of wealth and the exploitative land systems crippled India's ability to develop its own industries and agriculture. Money that could have been invested in India was instead used to fuel Britain's Industrial Revolution. With the arrival of the British East India Company, India's thriving industries began to decline. British policies and competition choked the life out of Indian artisans and industries. The British imposed heavy taxes on Indian goods, making them uncompetitive in the market. At the same time, they flooded India with cheaper British goods, undercutting Indian prices. This was a deliberate strategy to weaken India's economy and make it dependent on British goods. As a result, Indian artisans struggled to compete. Their workshops were abandoned, their looms stood idle, and their skills were forgotten. The once thriving textile industry of India, which had supplied fine fabrics to the world, was reduced to a mere shadow of its former self. The British also imposed their own system of education, which emphasized Western values and ignored Indian traditions. This led to a decline in the number of Indians learning traditional crafts and skills. Trade policies were designed to favor British interests, turning India into a supplier of raw materials and a market for British goods. India's industries were forced to decline, and its artisans were left to struggle. The consequences were far-reaching. India's economy was crippled, its people were impoverished, and its rich cultural heritage was threatened. As the British tightened their grip on India, the country's industries continued to decline. The Indian Railways, which was built by the British, became a tool for exploiting India's resources and transporting British goods. The British also exploited India's natural resources, including its forests, minerals, and waterways. This led to widespread environmental degradation and displacement of communities. The decline of Indian industries had a profound impact on Indian society. A major chunk of wealth was transferred from India to the Great Britain from 1857 to 1947. This led to widespread poverty, unemployment, and social unrest. The British East India Company's conquest of India was just the beginning. As the British Empire expanded its reach, it used the taxes imposed on the Indian people to fund its imperial ambitions. And that's how once a wealthy nation was brought to its feet by the British imperialism.